Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from StreetScores, and I have some great news, man. Apparently, the Washington Commanders just re-signed tight end Zach Ertz to a one-year deal. Of course, we got to break down why that's so important, how much he matters both on and off the field. Also, I have a big-time cap space update for you. How much cap space do we have? Where do we rank in the NFL? Like, are we still top 5 in cap space? Do we still have a lot of money to go do what we need to do? Also, I want to do like a tight end room projection as well. Like, are we done? Do we try to bring back John Bates to keep our three-headed tight end monster that we had last year, or are we looking towards the draft? I want to do all of that and more, talk about all of that. And you know this video is sponsored by WSH Sportsbook and Casino. And before we get into everything, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. Really appreciate y'all for pulling up and supporting every video. Again, have y'all covered for everything Commanders, your one-stop shop for everything free agency, draft, anything burgundy and gold. Without further ado, let's go and dive into this video right now, man. Let's get it. Adam. Alright, so Zach Ertz is back, man. And it's not necessarily surprising, but I'm still really happy nonetheless. And this is for slightly cheaper than what I actually expected. Like, I was in my little mock off season, the most recent one I did, I was hoping that he'd be like maybe a $4 million cap hit. That would be lovely, like a super best case scenario. But I already knew that was fairly unrealistic. And honestly, I would argue for what we got him for, like actually the real contract that he signed is actually a steal. Shouts out to Tom Pelissero for reporting first. Three-time Pro Bowl tight end Zach Ertz is re-signing with the Commanders on a one-year, $6.25 million deal worth up to $9 million in incentives. And based off of what he did last year, playing in all 20 games, including the playoffs, I'm expecting that guy to reach his $9 million in incentives. But I like the way that that contract is structured. With him being 34 going on to 35, I think he should have an incentive-based contract based on how many games he plays, how productive he is, how many passes he catches, touchdowns, all of those type of things. I think his contract should be structured like that at that age. Same thing with Bobby Wagner. I think all of those guys should have like a certain base of guaranteed money. That's the cap hit. And then they, you know, through play, through production, through playing time, all of that type of stuff, they can earn more. I think that makes a lot of sense. And Tom Pelissero finished up by saying Ertz made a big impact in Washington and is now heading back on a deal negotiated by a couple of people that we're not even going to dive into. And I also wouldn't be surprised if Zach Ertz accepted less money to come back to us rather than taking a little more to go somewhere else. And for multiple reasons. One, first of all, loyalty from the fact that no other team seemed to want him this time last year. Everybody had this red flag injury prone tag on him, and it seemed like everybody was avoiding him like the plague, and we were the one team that gave him a shot, and it paid off big time. So just off of loyalty for being the team that believed in me when nobody else did, I feel like Zach Ertz, that played a part into why he returned. Number two, the chemistry that he already has with Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels. I feel like this is the most important one, because why would he want to start from ground zero with another team learning an entirely new offense? Not only him learning the offense, but the offense learning him and learning how to utilize him to the best of his abilities and putting them in the best situations for him to win as often as possible. And then chemistry with the quarterback on top of that. And he already said he didn't want to play football anymore unless Cliff Kingsbury was his offensive coordinator. He basically was like, I'll retire before I don't play with Cliff Kingsbury. And especially since Cliff Kingsbury stayed as our offensive coordinator for at least one more year, it seemed like it was pretty much destined for Zach Ertz to return to the Commanders. Or again, the second option was retirement. He seemed very serious about not signing with another team, so it was mutual interest right there, clear interest from the Zach Ertz side. And then also, he just said earlier this year that he also said that he wishes that he was way younger so he could play with Jaden Daniels even longer. And I'm not gonna lie, that one made me tear up a little bit when he said it. He said the Cliff Kingsbury thing earlier this year and the Jaden Daniels thing earlier this year. And then like Jaden Daniels is a top 5 quarterback already, going into only his second year of his NFL contract, of his NFL career. Like, why would you want to leave that? Like, what's the potential situation that you can go to where you can upgrade at quarterback? It's very unlikely. There's arguably only 4 quarterbacks better than Jaden Daniels at this point, and a lot of those other teams already have their tight end. So, you know, this is literally the best situation for him, no matter how you look at it. And then even 3. And now he doesn't have to pack up and move his entire family. I'm pretty sure that plays a pretty significant role as to whether certain guys will re-sign with their current team or not. And then 4, who want to leave this elite culture that Adam Peters and Dan Quinn have already built? You saw that from the NFLPA survey that we went from dead last, 32nd at best, 31st in the NFLPA surveys that are voted on by over 1,600 active NFL players. We went from dead last year to, I think, 11th this year, 8th or something like that, somewhere in the top 12. So why would you want to leave that behind when things are only getting better? And remember, the only reason we weren't like top 5 or even number 1 in those NFLPA surveys is because a lot of the facilities and infrastructure that is really nothing much we could do with that until we get like a new stadium and new facilities and everything like that. So that's just something we can't really control. But everything culture-wise, everything that we can control, like 90% of stuff that you can control, we were like the best at, or one of the best teams in the NFL. And so Zach Ertz and everybody has to recognize that. Everybody that looks at those NFLPA player surveys, these potential free agents out there that are looking at which teams they want to sign with, they're looking at things like that. And especially Zach Ertz, who was there to experience it last year, why would he want to potentially give that up as well? And I mean, it is not even just like he's the only one benefiting from this. We benefit too. That man Zach Ertz just gave us 20 straight games last year at 34 years old. The only injuries I remember that he even suffered were like concussion scares that can happen to anybody and it has nothing to deal with age. When it comes to like his durability, I don't know, this training staff, this coaching staff, medical staff, whatever they got going on, they got something. The Fountain of Youth, I don't know what they're doing, but they're getting not only games out of guys, but good games out of guys. Remember, this is your second leading receiver only outside of Terry McLaurin. It was Terry McLaurin and then Zach Ertz. At 34 years old, playing all 20 games. Bobby Wagner played 99% of defensive snaps last year. I don't exactly know with this coaching, medical, and physical therapy staff, all of that. I don't know what they're doing, but whatever it is working. And again, that's another thing that, outside free agents, players from other teams are looking at and being like, hey, those guys know how to get games and production and stats out of people, and that's going to be good as far as my pockets go and me reaching contract incentives and things like that. That's a team I want to play for because they got something figured out to where even Zach Ertz at 34 years old is playing 20 games. Zach Ertz had 66 receptions for 654 yards and 7 touchdowns during the regular season. And then he had another 18 catches for 255 yards and a touchdown during the playoffs. He had nearly half of his regular season production just in those 3 playoff games alone, man. I don't know what it was, but that even makes me more optimistic that going into this next season, whatever trajectory he's on, it's a very positive one. And this guy's only getting better and better and better. The chemistry between him and Jaden Daniels is only increasing. Cliff Kingsbury is learning how to utilize him more. Zach Ertz is learning how to get open more often. I don't know what happened, but that playoff Zach Ertz was even better than the regular season Zach Ertz, and that has me way more optimistic about what's going to happen in the future because playoff Zach Ertz is the most recent Zach Ertz, so why would I not believe that he's going to continue that momentum going into next season? And also, I want to point out the fact that Zach Ertz, with his 7 touchdowns in 2024, was 4th among tight ends out of the entire NFL. His 66 receptions was 6th, and his plus 25 reception EPA was 9th out of all tight ends in the NFL. He was at worst 9th out of all tight ends in the NFL at some of the most important stats that a tight end can have. And remember, when we signed him last year, even a lot of our fans were screaming about all of the red flags that he had, him being injury prone, and why would we sign this guy? And then does that mean we're not going to draft a tight end in the first round or something like that because we can't depend on this guy to be available whenever our franchise quarterback needs him and things like that? And we still at that point didn't even know who we were going to necessarily select with the number 2 overall pick, even though it was more than likely going to be Jaden Daniels. We still didn't know yet. But either way, now look at Zach Ertz. He's Jaden Daniels' favorite target outside of Terry McLaurin. He's Jaden Daniels' safety blanket. When it's third down, nothing's going on. He don't know what Jaden Daniels is. The rare times that he is rattled and confused, he's looking for Zach Ertz more times than not. The when in doubt, Zach Ertz is somewhere where I need him to be. And on top of that, Zach Ertz is a leader in the locker room and for the team. I mean, he's basically the Bobby Wagner of the offense, like literally. And you can tell how much of a priority those two were. I'm talking Bobby Wagner and Zach Ertz by the fact that outside of I would say a backup kicker signing in Zane Gonzalez, these are our first two real re-signings of the team. And also remember that once we got to the playoffs and we stopped doing that random rotation of captains where every week it was a different captain, once we got to the playoffs, both Bobby Wagner and Zach Ertz were two of our consistent captains that were captain of every playoff game. They matter on and off the field. But what about the rest of the tight end room now? I feel like I've given y'all enough Zach Ertz. What's going on with the tight end situation? And how about we start with John Bates? Because right now he's technically an unrestricted free agent just like Zach Ertz was, but we haven't re-signed him yet. We prioritize bringing back Zach Ertz first. And so I have no idea what John Bates' market is right now and how much it would cost to get him back. I mean, like literally no idea what it costs to bring back like a third tackle on the field, essentially, that you don't expect to contribute much in the passing game. He's a really good blocking tight end, and a lot of teams do struggle finding that. So maybe there will be teams out there desperate for him, but it's not like he's just this supreme dual threat tight end that you're ever going to confuse and include him in like top 10 tight ends in the NFL debates. Even though Cliff Kingsbury tried it a couple of times and it worked a couple of times, like even in that Lions playoff win, using him as a receiving tight end, but then he did have that one fumble. Was it against the Eagles? It was or the Cowboys. I can't remember the exact game, but sometime late during the regular season last year, he had that one really critical fumble for us, man. It hurt too. So you don't really depend on John Bates to be a receiving tight end. Again, he's essentially a third tackle on the field. So what is the market for a guy like that? And then how about Ben Sinnott? Is it time for him to get a larger role in 2025 to where he can potentially step up as like the future Zach Ertz successor for 2026 and beyond? Because right now, again, John Bates is a blocking tight end. And right now, Ben Sinnott is basically seen as a fullback by this organization, at least by Cliff Kingsbury with the way that they utilize him. Another blocking tight end. And so Zach Ertz is really our only true receiving threat in that tight end room right now. So do we need to look towards the draft for that? Or maybe we just hope that they set Sinnott up in that way to, to become the next Zach Ertz. They start utilizing him, let him run routes. I mean, we saw in the preseason that guy was yak king. I'm not exactly sure why we didn't necessarily utilize that more in the regular season, at least. Maybe not in the playoffs when the stakes were higher, but in the regular season, I would have liked to see Ben Sinnott using the passing game a little bit more. Or, I mean, is it a matter of like, maybe Ben Sinnott isn't ready? Or is it Cliff Kingsbury just not giving them the opportunities? And just for the purpose of this video, we got to assume that they at least don't view Ben Sinnott as the next Zach Ertz. So let's think about who we could get to potentially add to this tight end room if we're not just comfortable with those three. Or say maybe we lose John Bates to free agency. And then now we need a third tight end, or even if we bring back John Bates, if we want a real fourth tight end, what are some options out there that we can look for? And before we move on to that half of the video, you already know, man, this show is provided by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. And if you're looking for a new sportsbook, it should be BetUS for sure. And first of all, they have the fastest and easiest payouts in the industry right now. Now, I know y'all want y'all money fast, so why not? And right now, BetUS is offering you a 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit and a 125% sign-up bonus on your next two deposits for up to $2,000 with code YouTube. That's YOUTUBE150. And again, they have a fast and easy deposit and withdrawal process, so it's really like, why not? And let's also take a look at some bets that we can get into directly through their website. How y'all feeling about DK Metcalf? Well, as you can see on the screen right now, BetUS has the Commanders tied with the Pittsburgh Steelers at plus 700 odds to land DK Metcalf somehow. Be a trade, whatever, it's going to have to be a trade. They're not going to cut him. And then there's even reports that maybe DK Metcalf may return depending on the quarterback situation. But if you feel like if he doesn't end up going back to the Seahawks, he ends up getting moved, right now, the Green Bay Packers have the highest odds. Then it's the New England Patriots, then the Las Vegas Raiders, and then again, you have the Steelers and the Commanders tied at plus 700 odds. At those odds, if you do believe that DK Metcalf will somehow end up on the Commanders out of all of those teams, even after the fact that we already traded for Deebo Samuel, and then maybe other receivers that are quality receivers that we don't even necessarily have to trade for and give up draft capital to get, if you feel like we're still going to end up with DK Metcalf, you could put down $10 and end up winning 70 at those plus 700 odds. And again, right now, BetUS is offering you a 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit and a 125% sign-up bonus on your next two deposits for up to $2,000 with code YouTube150. And again, I'm going to scream at y'all every time to please make sure you gamble responsibly. If you don't do nothing else, please make sure you gamble responsibly. Now let's take a look at some tight ends that we could potentially add to this tight end room, especially if we don't bring back John Bates. First up, off rip, Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram is the #1 tight end available right now, even before Mike Gesicki ended up going back to the Bengals on a 3-year deal worth up to $25.5 million. I still felt like Evan Ingram, even at 31 years old, is easily and arguably by far the best available tight end right now in free agency. Does bringing back Zach Ertz on a 1-year deal stop you from getting Evan Ingram? I don't necessarily think so. You know, things didn't necessarily, and I plan on doing like a whole video on Evan Ingram, so stay tuned for that. We'll talk about him way longer in another video. I'm gonna bring up a bunch of stats and all of those type of things. But long story short, with the Giants, he couldn't stay healthy. For some reason, his hands were horrible. Then he went to the Jaguars and then turned into one of the better receivers, or at least one of the best receiving tight ends in the entire NFL. Like, literally, it was crazy. He went on a wild run for like 1.5 years, you could argue, maybe 2 years. And so I would be willing to give him a chance. At only 31 years old again, we got 20 games out of 34-year-old Zach Ertz. He's going to be 35 this year, though. We'll see, even though, I mean, I have the utmost optimism for that. But Evan Ingram is 3 years younger than what Zach Ertz was last year. I would expect for Evan Ingram, if we were to bring him in, to come in here and be that receiving tight end. I think a guy like him would allow us to run way more 12 personnel, where you can have 2 tight ends on the field that can both block at least enough, well enough, not very well, not exceptionally well, but well enough to where you can still run the ball. They're not a liability like Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis were as far as run blocking. That was like as bad as it got. But then both of them are also quality receiving options. So now you have 2 dual threat tight ends on the field. Defenses have no idea what to do and how to stop you, how to cover you. And then, oh yeah, you got to remember, Jaden Daniels, a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, is your quarterback at the same time. That would be virtually unstoppable, and I don't think Evan Ingram would cost much. We'll get there again later on in another video where I do a full breakdown of Evan Ingram specifically. And then maybe you also have Juwan Johnson out there, potentially out there, you know, at age 28. Maybe you can see Cliff Kingsbury looking at him as like a guy that maybe hasn't reached his ceiling yet. And maybe that's another option if you lose out on John Bates. We'll see. Or if you want to just leave free agency alone, because the free agency tight end class is atrocious. I mean, you take that boy Evan Ingram out of it, and it's almost worthless in my opinion. So let's talk about this draft. I mean, you have Tyler Warren out of Penn State. I mean, you could argue that some people feel like he's the best tight end coming out of this draft class. He's already been comped to like Rob Gronkowski. And you also got to remember too that he's the one that like looked up to John Riggins, and that's literally why he wears the number that he wears right now, because he idolized John Riggins growing up. And so that would be lovely as a burgundy and gold player for us to get Tyler Warren as much as he idolized one of our Redskin greats, man. That would be beautiful. And then again, on top of all of that, people are literally comping him to like the next Rob Gronkowski. I would argue that maybe he's a little slower, like a tad bit. Not very noticeable though, but he's more agile. I would say he's a little bit quicker, more agile, better change of direction, but maybe a little slower. Still, that's a future Hall of Famer right there if you can get your hands on him. But you're gonna have to take him in the first round. He's not making it to your 29th pick. You would have to, I don't know, trade a player for a first round pick from another team, or you would have to trade up from 29 or something. You're not getting Tyler Warren at 29, plain and simple. So how about Colson Loveland from Michigan? And a lot of people are looking at him as like maybe a potentially slightly better blocking Greg Olsen, a really good tight end right there as well. That's another guy. I don't think he's making it to the 29th overall pick, but that's, hey, if you really want to prioritize tight end, which I don't think we should. I think edge rusher, a home run hitting running back, a defensive tackle, corner, especially if we don't get like a Travarius Ward or a DJ Reed. I feel like all of those are more important needs, offensive line as well. But I still do feel like we need to address tight end at some point in the draft, but it's not going to be with a guy like Tyler Warren or Colson Loveland. So how about Harrod Fannin Jr.? Maybe you can get him in like the 2nd round, and I see him as like a potentially, maybe even slightly more athletic Antonio Gates. You know, he played at Bowling Green. He didn't play against a lot of, you know, heavy level competition, but when it mattered most, I think he went against Penn State and Texas A&M. When it mattered most, when he went against great competition, he stepped up big time and had arguably his best games of his college career. They couldn't stop him, even though he was the only part of the offense, just like Aston Genty was for Boise State. That boy Harold Fannin Jr. as a tight end was the same thing for Bowling Green, where literally opposing defenses knew the entire offense goes through this guy. If we can focus all of our attention to stop him, they have no offense. And yet somehow, just like Aston Genty went on to be second place in the Heisman Trophy winning and had a fantastic season even with people stacking the box, Harold Fannin Jr. was basically the tight end equivalent of an Aston Genty, essentially. And I mean, he's an elite player too with an elite ceiling. There are some question marks there, which is why I feel like he should at least be available to our 29th pick. He may even be there in our second round pick. We'll see though. But there's elite athleticism there. Same thing. Speaking of elite athleticism, talking about Elijah Arroyo out of Miami, man. I mean, some people are predicting him to potentially be one of the fastest tight ends of all time. He reached the almost 22 miles per hour. When you actually look at his tape, you know, when they time the tape and they do like the next gen stats and all that type of stuff, that wasn't like him running a 40 time. That was like his timed running based on film. And that's at 6'5", 251 pounds, running nearly 22 miles per hour. Come on, dog. Like, if you can't take that ball of clay and mold him into a great player, especially potentially in like the second or third round, I don't know. You're just not cut out to be an offensive coordinator. I would trust Cliff Kingsbury to get a hold of somebody like that and potentially be able to do that. Then Gunnar Helm of Texas. I mean, some people are comping him to maybe like a Dalton Schultz. Maybe you could potentially look at him there. I think he's quite likely to be there at least second round, maybe even third round. Then you have Mason Taylor out of LSU, and some people look at him as like a Dallas Goedert. And basically my point is there are a lot of quality tight ends here. It just depends on how desperate you are for a draft tight end, especially if you don't bring back John Bates. Maybe we become slightly more desperate, or like if you don't sign like an Evan Ingram, then maybe we will address tight end sooner in the draft than you think, even though we just took a tight end in the second round last year. So that would be a little weird to take a tight end within the first 2, maybe even 3 rounds this upcoming draft. But at the same time, as excited as I am about Ben Sinnott, and I think he has the potential to be a really good dual threat tight end, so far this organization hasn't shown me that they believe that. They've literally used him as a fullback. Adam Peters literally compared him to Kyle Juszczyk, and they've literally utilized him in that way. He's been blocking more than he's been doing anything as a receiving tight end. That guy's been down there making tackles on special teams coverage. So, you know, excuse me for not assuming that he's going to be ready to step up and be the next Zach Ertz for us immediately. Just because I think he has the talent to, but so far Cliff Kingsbury and the Commanders franchise have not shown me that they think he can. So I'm just assuming that they're looking for another tight end, but we'll see. But also, I want to point out the fact that so far, just this week alone, we traded for Deebo Samuel. We re-signed kicker Zane Gonzalez to a 1-year, $1.7 million deal. We re-signed Bobby Wagner to a 1-year deal worth up to $9.5 million. We re-signed Zach Ertz to a 1-year, $6.25 million deal worth up to $9 million. And then we released Jonathan Allen just a couple of days ago as well. We've been making some moves. And so now, as far as cap space goes and where we rank in the NFL after this Zach Ertz deal, just remember Zach Ertz is making at least $6.25 million, and he'll at least be a $6.25 million cap hit against our cap space. Maybe it'll probably go up to 7. We'll see. But right now, because websites haven't just updated Zach Ertz's contract into our cap space yet. So when you're looking at cap space, you're going to spot track over the cap. Remember, you got to subtract basically like 6 to 7 million from it at the moment that I'm recording this video right now. Maybe by the time some of y'all are watching this video and then y'all go to those websites, maybe they update it, but they haven't done it for me yet. So on over the cap, right now we're third in cap space still. But of course, when you take away that 6 or 7 million, we actually moved to 4th, right behind the Cardinals, the Chargers, or the Patriots. And that leaves us with about like $72 million in cap space, which is still ahead of the 5th place Steelers, who have $63 million in cap space. So we're still really far up there. And then when you look at the spot track, who still has Deebo Samuel as a $5 million cap hit, we're going to dive into that pretty soon. Right now, on their website, you subtract 6-7 million, we still have $86 to $87 million worth of cap space, which puts us 4th, even ahead of the Arizona Cardinals, only behind the Chargers and the New England Patriots. So, hey, I'll take that. For some reason, they have Deebo Samuel, us utilizing that exercise option like I brought up a few days ago. This spot track mentioned, they mentioned it. They did a tweet about it, and I mentioned it. Then I just kind of forgot about it. But they said $5.2 million worth of a cap hit for Deebo Samuel in 2025 right now. So when you go look at his contract, we have some void years in there. Right now, he's estimated to be a $12.3 million cap hit next year, without him even having a contract. That's just one of them void year finesses. And then he's like $3 million against the cap in 2027, $3 million in 2028, and $3 million in 2029. So we like spread it out, which is weird because we haven't necessarily been utilizing void years here since Adam Peters was here last year. But then again, we brought over Brandon Sauce. Now after free agency, he came over from the Lions. He's seen as like the Sean McVay, the Ben Johnson of like front office guys, like really young, super intelligent guy that's like on the super high trajectory to where like people are projecting him to be like the next great GM in the NFL, like Adam Peters or Howie Roseman eventually when he gets there. But right now he's here to handle our contracts and help us somewhat with like free agency, maybe a little bit of scouting and things like that, but more so the business side, the contract finesses. And whatever we did with Deebo Samuel, we figured out a way to exercise that option that I mentioned a few days ago. Again, Deebo Samuel is only a $5.2 million cap hit for us this year. I'm assuming they're structuring it that way to where if Deebo Samuel if he doesn't work out, he hits you for $5.2 million this year. We'll figure it out next year about him hitting us for $13 million or whatever. But if it does work out, which is the reason that you traded for him because you hope that it works out, you think that it works out, and we want to re-sign Deebo Samuel to a longer contract, we want to extend him, whatever, then you can kind of finesse those void years in another way and turn it into like a regular contract to where it's not void years. And then, you know, basically, ultimately, they're going to figure out some way to make that contract make sense. But my main point is, the reason Over the Cap has us so high in the cap space rankings, again, Over the Cap has us 4th, Spot Track has us 3rd, and that's because Spot Track has Deebo Samuel only eating up $5.2 million worth of cap space this year instead of the original $16 million that people expected that was pretty much supposed to be canceled out by us releasing Jonathan Allen. But now between releasing Jonathan Allen and trading for Deebo Samuel, we've netted a positive $11 million worth of cap space. And if the Commanders really wanted to do that, sounds like we're potentially going to be making some serious moves in free agency. I'm not going to lie, because otherwise you wouldn't bother. Just go ahead and let Deebo Samuel be a $16 million cap hit. You don't have to worry about his void year cap hits that are going to hit you next year and even all the way down to 2029 years after that, unless you plan on utilizing that money, that extra $11 million towards something right now. So be on the lookout. That's my one clue as to like, oh, okay, the Commanders may be spending some pretty big money in free agency this upcoming, just in a couple of days. So stay tuned for that. Also, you know I'm happy if Jaden Daniels is happy. That boy already went to social media and let you know that he is excited to get his boy Zach Ertz back, as you can see on the screen right now. Jaden Daniels has been excited about every major move, about us trading for Deebo Samuel, us re-signing Bobby Wagner, and he's just as excited about getting his boy Zach Ertz back. So now it's time to run it back, man. And then now, after all of that great news, I have one bit of bad news. And I mean, I should have expected this because you don't let good left tackles ever hit free agency. And the Ravens, shot clock buzzer beater, just 2 days before the legal tampering period, made sure they re-signed left tackle Ronnie Stanley to a 3-year, $60 million deal worth every penny, in my opinion. I really wanted him. He was one of my favorite potential free agents that we could have signed, but again, the Ravens didn't even let him hit free agency. That was very smart of them. If you have a quality left tackle, you do whatever it takes to make sure you sign them long term. Do not ever even let them hit the open market. Shouts out to the Ravens, smart move, but as a Commanders fan, I'm sad about it, but I wanted to make sure I updated y'all on that because I just talked about how the Commanders were reportedly interested in Ronnie Stanley just a few hours ago, earlier today, and then now he's gone, so off the market. Just wanted to give y'all that update. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know if you feel about everything discussed in the video. Just to follow that like button, to follow the subscription button, to follow the bell next that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Really appreciate y'all again for supporting every video. Again, your one-stop shop for everything Commanders. Of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about us re-signing Zach Ertz. Do you feel like we're done with the tight end position, especially if we re-sign John Bates? How much are you willing to even give John Bates on a contract to bring him back? How many years? 2-3 years? Maybe a 1-year deal? How do you feel about the John Bates situation? And if John Bates leaves, or even if he comes back, how do you want to address the tight end room? Do you feel like we need to draft another guy? Do you feel like we need to target like an Evan Ingram? Let me know how you feel about that. And of course, also let me know how you feel about our potential cap space situation, because like we dove into with Deebo Samuel, them doing whatever contract finesse they had to do, exercising that one specific option to where he's only $5 million against the cap. Do you agree with me that that sounds like the Commanders are trying to pony up and put some real money into this free agency, and we may potentially make some big moves as far as signing guys, maybe trading for like a Trey Hendrickson or something and giving him the money that he wants? Do you agree with me that there's a reason that they chose to do all of that complicated stuff to add void years to Deebo Samuel's contract, or is that just doing it just to do it? Let me know how y'all feel about everything discussed in the video, of course, and also remember this video was sponsored by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino, and please make sure if you don't do nothing else, please make sure you gamble responsibly. Really appreciate y'all. Make sure you leave a like on the way out. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.